Loved it or hated it, if you finished the Dune series, then you need something new to read. This video is for you. If you aren't familiar with my what to read after, I divide this video up into two. People who liked Dune, what kind of books should they read next? And people who didn't like Dune, what kind of books should those people read? So let's get into the books. First, let's start with people who liked Dune. There are a lot of reasons to like Dune, but I like to generalize so that way I have a target to aim at for the book recommendations that I'm going to list. So some of the things that really stand out about Dune are the incredible world building, full of all kinds of realistic lore, politics, religion. We have a lot of power dynamics, political maneuvering. We, of course, have rival noble houses that are at it for power grabs. There are just an expansive amount of storytelling to be had in this world. We also have an essential chosen one or Messiah trope. And especially in the first book, it is kind of a coming of age sort of story. We also have a series that gets bigger and broader in scope as the books go on. And I think that pretty much does it for the generic things about Dune that are so fantastic. Maybe I would add just a little bit of philosophical psychology, sociology added in there. So, what books or series should you read next other than the rest of the Dune series? Let's start with a very popular Red Rising by Pierce Brown. This series takes place in an empire where all peoples are classified into colors. And Darrow is a lowly red miner who is working on an unimportant nameless planet somewhere. This series is essentially a revenge story as Darrow is motivated by the untimely death of his young wife. And he decides that he is going to, at all costs, climb the ladder to the very top and burn everything to the ground. He wants to tear the political structure down. This is very similar in many ways and might scratch the itch of the Dune series because we kind of have that chosen one that has to work for it. We also have a coming of age tale in the first book that gets a lot more expansive and wide and epic in scope in subsequent books. We also have a lot of political maneuvering. We have not necessarily noble houses, but noble colors and people who are born to this. We also have a lot of world building lore in this series that I think often gets forgotten about. So I think this series might be something that people who liked the Dune series may really enjoy. Another series that might be for people who loved the Dune is the Luna trilogy by Ian MacDonald. This one starts with Luna New Moon, and it is a completed trilogy. This trilogy follows the Corta family, one of 5 corporate families that control the moon. And the family is about to transition from the head of the Corta family, who's going to retire, to the heir, a notoriously vulnerable time for which all of the other families are getting ready to strike. Similar to the struggle for power over Arrakis, there is a lot of political maneuvering around control over the moon and its resources. And there are a lot of really intense power plays that happen in the first book that don't come to fruition until future books. We also get to see a little bit of an underdog story, especially in this first book, as we follow some flashbacks of Mama Corta, the head of that family, who is remembering how she brought her family to power. And it is that perfect combination of what's happening right now and the political machinations that are, and the struggle and the underdog story for what it used to be. This was a really interesting story that definitely built on itself, and I ended up loving it more in the end than I did in the beginning. So you have to get through a little bit of some boring, slow-paced parts to really get into this trilogy, but I think it really might end up scratching that itch that the Dune series had. Next on this list is another series that also has some very big similarities to the Dune series, and that is the Ender's Saga by Orson Scott Card. That starts with Ender's Game. This series stars, at least at the beginning, a young boy genius who, in the future, is drafted into military training school against the imminent threat that is the aliens who might invade, known as the Buggers. Throughout his coming-of-age tale, we very much get a little bit of a chosen one who has to strive for his status. However, the real combination between these two characters of Ender and Paul is that both boys really come to understand that there are great consequences that come with this Messiah chosen one status. And they spend a significant portion of their lives dealing with the consequences of what it means to become what they were set on a path to become as. As a matter of fact, the second book in both series deals with how each boy handles and shoulders that responsibility in much the same way. These books are similar. Definitely you should check out the Ender Saga if you liked Dune. The next series is a little bit of a more modern series, and this one is the Sun Eater series by Christopher Rocchio that begins with Empire of Silence. This one also takes place in a far-flung future where we are introduced to Hadrian, who we are told is the man who is responsible for wiping out an entire solar system and a sun, and causing the deaths of the creatures in that solar system, hence known as the Sun Eater, hence the series name. However, in this first series, we really get to go back and see Hadrian tell us his coming-of-age story, encompassing things like slavery and space gladiators and all kinds of crazy space adventures. This series gets really deep and dark. There's quite a lot of philosophy and sociology as well as psychology in this series that has some similarities with the Dune series. And in a kind of a strange way, Hadrian is very much a chosen one messiah, but maybe the reverse of Paul. I would be very interested in hearing your thoughts on the similarities and or differences between these two, but I do think that this series might be able to scratch that itch. And finally, the last series to recommend is the First Sister trilogy by Lyndon Lewis. In this series, we have two human factions who are at war with each other, and we follow one perspective from each side. The reluctant soldier who is manipulated and used to fight for one side, and we have the trapped nun who is forced into religious service, and the only way out is up. Each of the two characters do interact, and there is a lot of really intriguing plot, especially when you consider how religion has gotten into bed with politics in this particular novel. There are quite a lot of religious machinations interwoven into the political structure of these worlds, and in that way, I think it has some similarities to Dune. However, after that, I do think that these stories are very different, and it is a very different revenge tale, in my opinion. But there are quite enough similarities that I wanted to put it on the list. Now, let's talk about the books that you should read if you did not enjoy the Dune series. Now, there are sadly things not to love in this series, including the fact that maybe you're just tired of the writing style. And if that's the case, there are so many other writers out there. However, sometimes the philosophy got a little bit too bogged down, and sometimes, especially towards the end of that Dune series, it was a lot harder to follow and sort of went into the weeds a little bit. So we want to get back to the core of what made Dune good, or we want to get completely opposite. So if we're going to talk about something that is easy access, complete opposite, but still on a sandy, futuristic setting, you can't get more different than The Martian by Andy Weir. Not only is it not a series, it's a standalone. It has absolutely no politics whatsoever. There's no chosen one or messiah. There's no kooky religion to follow along with. Instead, we just have one man on the whole planet, and all he has to do is survive. You'd think that'd be easy, wouldn't you? This is still a really fantastic, fun book that you must like the main character's personality to get along with, because there isn't anyone else in the whole book. However, I do think that if we're talking about opposites here, The Martian might be a good next book pickup. The next one that I can think of that would be somewhat similar and yet very opposite is a book called Perdido Street Station by China Miéville. Now, this is the beginning of a trilogy, although if you wish, it could be a standalone. This is a sci fantasy world that is really intricate. The world building is on par with Dune. It is grotesque and gritty and vivid as all heck. This story follows a man who can get you anything in the underbelly of New Crobazon, a city well known for being a melting pot of lots of different technologies and lots of different species. In this world, the man gets a job to help a single creature who used to be able to fly, whose wings have been ripped off, and he is seeking the ability of flight again. And this might be done through genetic manipulation or technology or some semblance of the two. However, his half beetle, half woman lover, who is also an artist known as Lin, gets embroiled into this plot in a very deep and sideways kind of way. What's really interesting about this story is there are no heroes. So it is the exact opposite of Dune. No one is a chosen one. There are no heroes. And it is a really deep, truly melancholic tale that is not one that you're likely to forget. So if you want something vastly different, but to the level of the world building that Dune is, I would highly recommend China Miéville's Perdido Street Station. Now, if we want to go a little bit back towards the closeness of Dune without being Dune, I think that we might need to consider, again, the beginning of a trilogy, one written by Sherry Tepper called Grass. This is the first in the Arabai trilogy, but it absolutely can be read as a standalone novel. In this world, the human colony planets as well as Earth have been ravaged by a very deadly plague. We're talking beyond pandemic level. And there's only one planet who hasn't had a single case. It is a rural planet that is made mostly of grass. And Earth decides to send Lady Marjorie West Rider there to discover the secret of the planet's immunity. However, when she gets there, she finds that the noble houses have a very strange relationship with the horse like alien creatures that live on this planet. And there are power dynamics there that are going to be completely opposite of Dune. It's going to be strange and unique. I've never encountered anything quite like it, and it's very haunting. We also get to discover through Lady Westrider's investigation that the immunity isn't the thing they should be looking for, but rather there are more imminent threats that need to be taken care of. This story very much goes into sociology and psychology. We also have a lot of really intriguing power dynamics, and we get to explore a totally new and alien world in this book. So, this is one that I think if you are looking to scratch an itch but just didn't get along with Dune, this one is one you must consider picking up. Finally, last but not least, another book that people who didn't love Dune might enjoy is maybe a little bit more lighthearted, but still's got some politics in it. Let's talk about Generation Ship by Michael Mamet. After generations of going through their generation ship, we are less than a year out of our destination planet, and anticipation starts breaking down the social structure. People start rioting on the ship, nobody wants to follow the rules, and the politicians are having a hard time maintaining peace. We also have the scientists who are desperately striving for information to answer the question that everyone on the ship wants to know. Is this planet what they promised? Is it habitable? Are we going to be able to live there? But for some reason, they're not able to get all of the information that they require to answer those questions. And between the two, we also have my favorite third-party character, a hacker who is pulled in both directions, who is being asked to help keep the peace and also to try to find the scientific truth while maintaining her own sense of right and wrong. There are a lot of really cool maneuvering here. There's a lot of political power. There's a lot of pulling for politics versus science and truth versus peace. And oh my gosh, the story was super fun, really interesting, and is a single standalone novel. One that you might be able to finish in just a few weeks. So that does it, you guys, for my recommendations for what to read when you're finished with the Dune series. And of course, if you have any other recommendations, please link those in the description box down below. If you want to see more videos from me in the What to Read After series, I'm always interested in your book suggestions, or you can click on the link down there. See ya in the next video.